Hi, I'm Dean Bushmiller from Expanding Security, and we're going to talk about the CHFI. This is the introduction to the course, and I want you to understand about the certification. I want you to understand what we're going to talk about, and also kind of what you need to make the CHFI work out for you. So we need to talk about the certifications that are out there, because for forensics investigation, this is kind of wild, wild west territory. So remember, forensics is about the preservation of the data, extracting usable information, and interpretation of the potential evidence. Normally, when we talk about forensics and you watch a TV show, they talk about scraping bones, they talk about tissue samples, they talk about fingerprints. Well, we're just taking that same science that's going on there and applying that same rigor of science to computer investigations. So it's kind of a new discipline. I mean, we're talking about, at the most, it's 30 years old. Not only are we talking about a new discipline that is not standing still, but the rapid pace of mobile presence and also mobile phones and smart devices really changes this game over and over and over again for us. So we have to be prepared. In the 80s and the 90s, what happened was they realized that law enforcement needed something. They needed some direction to say, how do we know that this person should be working on this information? In the 80s and 90s, when they did investigations of child pornography and maintaining child pornography, investigators actually had to look at the pornography in most cases. And so all that's washed away, and they changed that, and they put all kinds of scientific tools in place. And we'll talk about each one of these elements as we go along. So what happened was the National Consortium of Justice Information and Statistics said, since 1969, we've needed a way to make sure that we have qualified law enforcement people doing the correct thing. Then came the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. They said, okay, well, we'll do training. This is a part of what we do, and we'll do this for federal agencies, not for corporations, not for you and I. Now, if you are a law enforcement officer, you have access to forensics training that I don't. I'm not a law enforcement officer. I don't play one on TV. Nobody's deputized me. So you have the ability to get certification that I don't. That's through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Okay, then this reaches out, and there needs to be kind of another extension of this that reaches from just law enforcement when we're talking about crime punishable by imprisonment to crime like criminal activity like theft, like white-collar crime. So what happens is the National White-Collar Crime Center says, you know what? There's a lot of computer crime going on, and we need to do something about this. And they started interacting with local law enforcement, and this grew out of the FBI's centers of excellence. Now, here's the problem. If you call the FBI and say, hey, somebody stole my identity as an individual, and you recall them to do that, they have so many cases that are coming to them that they can't afford to pay attention to you. And it used to be the threshold, if you went to an HTCIA meeting or an InfraGard meeting, it used to be that the hinted threshold, and nobody's ever published this, but usually the mark in the line was, is there $1 million at stake here or more? If so, then that usually meets the threshold of requirement where we can put investigators on this to make them work out. So, I mean, it could be $900,000 is stolen, and there's no way to address it, to get help. So that's where the NW3C pops up. In 2008, so now we're getting kind of close to what we're doing here, the American Academy of Forensic Science created this new section. So these are the guys, the AAFS, these are the guys that are, digging up bones like you see here. And they said, you know what, we need a separate division for forensics for computers. And they said the digital evidence community does not have an agreed upon certification program or list of qualifications for digital forensics examiners. And here's the problem. Take a look here. Some agencies still treat examination of digital evidence as an investigation rather than a forensic activity. There's wide variability in and uncertainty about education, experience, training, and those practicing these disciplines. The problem that we're running into is that we don't have a nice, clear path in digital forensics. And this also gets really, really difficult when we talk about mobile devices and acquiring data from them. When we also deal with memory forensics and dealing with capturing images and not changing, because the rules of forensics, when we're talking about physical things, is a little bit different than when we're talking about digital things.